Hi, it's Deanna from Futures Past, and I revisited a photo album that I did a video about it last week. It has the Havens family of Shelter Island, which is a place on Long Island. I'm not sure. I mean, I live on Long Island, but I'm in Nassau County. I really don't know very much about Suffolk County, especially anything really to do about Long Island history, as I'm a transplant from Queens, New York. So apparently, this is a family. I think that like basically like were the early pioneers of Long Island, of the eastern area of Long Island, the Havens family, and I must have gotten their album somehow from a seller that was selling this. She lived out of Southampton, Long Island, and so what I did was I don't really like taking these cards out of these old albums because they're very hard to remove without almost possibly damaging them. But in another video, I had a part two of the original video. I did take some, like maybe a couple of cards out, but tonight I just like was messing around and figured, what the hey, I'll take some more out. So I did, and I got quite a little bit of a surprise because hidden sandwiched between pictures were other pictures. And now I know I had such a hard time removing them from the little slots that are in the album. And a couple of delightful little things popped out at me. Like, for example, this particular person, her name was Anna Havens. And apparently she was quite a lady during the Victorian times. Ladies were supposed to be very modest. Society frowned upon ladies that were forward or, not basically quiet and ladylike. And what struck me as funny was when I flipped over the picture after I pulled it out of the card, I read a little note from the girl in the photograph. And here's what it says. It says, "This was taken just after I had been flirting, which accounts for the mouth with its upturned lips." And girls really, back then, I mean, they flirted, of course, but they didn't make it very obvious. It was considered really unladylike. And I was like blown away by that because to even admit that you were flirting was sort of indecent. I mean, this was back in a time when ladies didn't even show, I mean, their ankles. That was considered immodest and immoral. And ladies weren't even really allowed to wear their hair down. That's why you notice on most of these photos, ladies wore their hair up. Wearing their hair down was considered for the bedroom only. And only young girls who weren't adults yet wore their hair down. So as you can imagine, that little thing is a little bit scandalous of the time, even in joke or jest. So that is pretty interesting. I wonder who this card was sent to. And on the bottom, she also wrote, "Your cousin Annie, the wild girl of the," and I can't make out the last word. The wild girl of the, is that bunch, group? The I don't know what the heck that word is. If anyone can see what that last word is, please tell me what that says, because this is like really like miffing me, and I would like to know what it is. Sometimes their handwriting, is a little too fancy, so it's hard to make out. But your cousin Annie, the wild girl of the rest? I don't know. So she was, I guess, quite a lady, huh? Interesting. So now the funny thing is, it's from Iowa, and I'd say 90% of the cards in this album are all New York and Brooklyn. So that's interesting. So I'm going to show you now, even if there's these photos here in this pile that aren't interesting, don't have little titillating little bits of info on them, I'm going to show you some of them anyway, so you can see the art design and the graphics from the photographer studios that are on the backs of these cards as well as on the front. So we have this lady here, and she had taken this photo on swanky little a swanky little studio on Fifth Avenue in New York. And oops, and there's their art graphic on the back. And again, it says Fifth Avenue. I guess it was still really like highfalutin back then as well. Now we have this definite Civil War era photo of this lady wearing a hoop skirt. And here is the photograph is art graphic on the back. Very interesting. So I'll continue to show you now. If you have a short attention span, I apologize for this video. I suggest you go elsewhere because this one's going to last a while. If you're into history, antique photos, just Victorian stuff in general, you'll like this video. So what I like about this photo is I collect antique dolls. And as you can see in the left corner here, this little girl is holding an antique German China head doll. And I collect these dolls. I have quite a few in my collection. And although it's quite blurry, you can't really see the features of the doll, I was able to identify it immediately as a German 1860s China head doll. That's a highbrow China head doll or a flat top. So I can definitely date this photo to about 1860s, 1870s, without a doubt. And that's the graphics for the advertisement for the photographer, his logo. Next we have this Civil War aged photo. Gentleman with mutton chop, beard. And that's the advertisement logo of the photographer. We definitely have another 1860s, possibly late 1860s, also mid 1860s, probably time frame. Now, how you can tell is that this photograph is squared off on the corners. 1870s and on, the corners got rounder, and that was to help them fit into the slots in these photo albums. The squared off edges actually used to tear the little slots in the photo albums, and photographers started to round them off. And there's the advertisement logo of the photographer. And you can see it's very plain, very simple. It doesn't take up the whole card. After about sometime in 1870, the logos got way bigger, got more fancy, and took up backs of the whole entire card. The earlier ones from the 1860s were very simple, and they didn't take up the whole card. So there's a little lesson there if you're collecting photos. Also, if another thing I wanted to reiterate is you see the little goldish brownish lines that go around the border. That's another telltale sign that this is an 1860s photo. See here, this one has it as well. And this is an unusual color. I've never seen one in this sort of lavender shade. You don't generally see them in that type of coloring. But that's another telltale sign. Of course, the squared corners. Here's another one with the border. And this is showing you 1860s time frame. Again, we have squared off corners. The border going around it in a goldish brown shade. And that clearly denotes an 1860s photo. And again, we have a simple logo on the back. And that's Williamsburg. Williamsburg is in Brooklyn, New York. Okay, again, we have another Civil War era photo, or just after the Civil War, previous to 1870s. Now, if you do see a rounded corner, that was cut. Sometimes people cut them with scissors to make them fit into the album, but you see clearly the double straight border going around the photo. And again, that helps you to date the photo. This lady actually looks ill. You see the circles under her eyes. She looks very, very gaunt. A lot of people did not survive to old age in Victorian times. I actually the life expectancy was only about 40 to 45 years of age. So people got sick very easily and died young, and there was not the type of medical care that we have now. Now here's another interesting thing. This was a tax revenue stamp. There was a thing called the sun tax, and during 1864, I believe, to 1866, they had to pay a tax revenue stamp. Now here we go. Now this is dated. The photographer would charge the person, and they bought the stamp to pay the revenue tax to pay for the war, and they would initial it and date it or just hand cancel it. And this is great because it's telling us 1864, as you can see. And now we can date this to the Civil War. So now we know for sure, Civil War photograph. And again, that was the clear giveaway, was the lines going around it, the squared off corners. Now this seals the deal, 1864 on the back. And again, we have another Civil War era photograph. Again, this lady doesn't look well. You can see the dark lines and circles under her eyes. She has a lovely dress. And this is the graphic. Sometimes they can be a little fancier than just plain font. But this clearly denotes that Civil War time. It doesn't take up the whole back of the card. And we have Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Now we have another Civil War time frame photograph. And there's the photographer's logo. And if you hear a noise, that's my kitty cat. He's playing. He's playing with his toy mouse. Here's another. And you can see squared off corners. This is probably mid to late 1860s. It's a child that looks like he or she is crying. And I don't blame him or her because, and this has no logo by the way, because it took so long to take a photo that it was like equivalent to going to the dentist and getting a root canal for kids. Kids must have hated getting their photos taken, and I cannot blame them 1 ounce. Here's another Civil War era photograph. We got the border going around it, the squared off corners, and we got a beautiful, beautiful lady with a hoop skirt that comes out like bell-shaped. She has pagoda sleeves. Pagoda sleeves were wide, bell-shaped sleeves. And that denotes the time. And the photographer's logo. Again, this is a very, very 1860s album. A lot of times they'll be mixed with a lot of 1870s photos. But this one is clearly 1860s time frame mostly. And this was hidden, sandwiched in between 2 other cards, and I didn't even know it existed until tonight. And you can see her off-the-shoulder dress. It's a young girl. Beautiful, beautiful gown. And there's the logo. Another Civil War era photo. The border, the squared off corners. We have a tintype, probably around that same time frame, a little later maybe 1868-ish. Now this one, definitely Civil War era. We have the red border lines going around the squared off corner. Now this card you can see on the right side was cut down so it can fit into the album. We have a plain tintype here of that time frame, maybe late 1860s. There's no information. This is a very old one right here, 1860s for sure. This might be a salted photo, not a albumen. It could have been processed with salts. No info on the back, so that may be early Civil War or previous to the Civil War. This is a very old one. Whenever you see this type of middle vignette with all this fanciness, we're talking early 1860s to mid 1860s. And there's no info, so it could be previous to the Civil War, before they started doing the tax stamps. Again, here we go with the red borders. And now, see how the corners are getting slightly rounded? So this might be mid to late 1860s. Again, we got an early photo. No info. Now you see how these corners are rounded off? This is possibly about 1869, 1870. This is an early rounded corner photo when it just started to be the norm. And you see now how the graphics got larger? And that can help you date. Actually, it could be even 1872, 1874. Here's an early square cut, cornered off card. Definitely Civil War. We got the blue border going around it. And here we go. Okay, a tax stamp. So probably 1864, 1865. So this is probably during the Civil War or just as it ended. We had a tintype here. No info. Definitely another Civil War photo. See the border. Look at that dress. Almost, I think she has a pocket on the front of her dress. You can see like a line going across, like a hem. I wonder if that, because that was an unusual fashion thing. I wonder if that was one big pocket on her dress. Oh, and she has a stamp. Unfortunately, it's not dated. It's just X'd off. But there you go. So that's a red stamp. That's showing you that is definitely like Civil War era. Here's here's a tintype. And the cheeks are tinted. Unfortunately, no info. Another Civil War one. Look at that big, giant bell-shaped dress. She may be a widow. She's wearing all black. And the beads that are around her neck, you see them? That was something a lot of widows wore. They were black jet beads, Whitby jet. And that was one of the fashions for widows. So she may be a Civil War widow. Here we got another Civil War era gentleman. Squared off cornered card. Very nice outfit he's wearing. He looks like a wealthy man. And a very, very tiny graphic. Like, now look at that. See the logo, how small it is? Then we got Lincoln and his family. I believe his sons were Tad and Todd. And this is just an album filler. It's a lithographic CDV card. Here's another definite Civil War era photo. We have a border. This gentleman has a really fancy top hat, mutton chops, interesting attire. And we're coming to the end here. Sorry, I know I bored you for long enough. A tintype. And we have, look at this. It's like the Declaration of Independence on the back of here with all this information. This is a silver mirror picture. I gotta look that up. I mean, it looks like a tintype to me, but maybe they called it that. I don't think it's a daguerreotype. I gotta look, Google that. This I found sandwiched in between some other photos. I don't know what the heck this is. It looks like a caricature. I think that's Abe Lincoln on the right. I don't know who the other fellows are. It says taking a smile. And it looks like Lincoln having a beer with some guys. I don't know if it was to make fun of him. I don't know. And there's no info on the back. But I'm going to Google this and look this up to see what this is all about. And last but not least, we have this beautiful lady by the name of Lucca. I'm thinking of the song, My Name is Lucca. I live on the second floor. I know, I have the most horrible voice. I apologize. I'll spare you guys and not sing the rest. So we got Lucca wearing this gorgeous, gorgeous dress. Look at that. With all the flowers and the fringes. And she's got pearls around her neck. Her hair is quite amazing. Now this is an 1870s card. You see the rounded corners? Her hair is definitely the style of 1870s, braided and piled on top of her head. And she's got a quite lovely dress. And it was taken on Fifth Avenue. So, okay. So I thought for whoever's still here, you guys would be interested. If you left, oh well. I apologize to the bored people out there with ADD. But again, thanks for watching. If you like what you see, hit the thumbs up and subscribe. And I'll be posting as many photographs as I can in the near future. I order these things all the time. I'm a big fan of photographs and photographic history and the Victorian era. So thanks a lot for watching, and have a great evening or day wherever you are in the world.